All right. Welcome, Chidi. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, good to be on here with you.
So, can you introduce yourself to us?
So yeah, my name is Chidi Egbujie, and my aim in life at the moment is to help business owners turn financial chaos into success and clarity.
That is so good because I find that founders, we're always doing so much, but then our books are a little bit messy. So, I'm really glad that we can talk today and learn from you. So, when a founder is talking with you about, oh, they want to grow, how do you define growth? What growth really means when you look at the numbers?
I think growth would, for many, it's revenue, but growth will it goes beyond just revenue. We're talking about your margin, the loads of metrics, but some of the important things as well, like time. So it's really starting to understand what the business owner wants, and then we're thinking about the metrics in terms of margin, obviously revenue, but then it's then your pricing, and there's the term growth is vast, but it's really we try and nail that down with the business owner to understand what growth looks like for them. And then it's trying to get your numbers to try and sort of shed the light and point you towards that direction.
Oh, that makes so much sense. And I love that you mentioned it's not just about the money. Of course, we want to make more money, but time. Like, are you making a lot of money, but you have no time to do what you love? Or are you doing both? So that makes so much sense. So if someone was to come to you and they're like, I need something simple, what is the simplest financial model a founder can build to make better decisions right now?
So that's a very good question. It will span two things, right? One of the clearest things that a founder can do is really just build on what I talked about earlier on, which is your growth, which is trying to understand where you're trying to get to. And that in itself will help you, it will just shape how you think, but also it would then build on these strategic decisions that will come on the back of that, that would then drive your next 1 year of actions, your next 60 days, 30 days. And that's critical when you start to be clear on what you're doing. But ultimately, at the heart of all of that is cash flow. And that would be one of the things I would ask people to focus on, which is like your plan and just try and make sure we don't run out of cash.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about cash flow. So let's talk about cash flow timing. Why is it more important than revenue? And how do you help founders to stay ahead of it?
I think cash flow, when I talk about cash flow, I almost get goosebumps. My blood goes warm because I've seen profitable businesses go under because they run out of cash. And I think if you think about it, like let's think about oxygen, right? So I breathe in and out when I need it. Let's call that my cash need. When I need cash, I breathe in and out. But when I exercise, I need more oxygen. Now, in the real world we live in, when I exercise, that increasing demand of oxygen is backed up by an excess supply of oxygen in the air, right? But in business, your timing of what's happening to your transactions, it starts to play, starts to change. So when people pay you, when the demands are coming in, everything starts to change. And so that traditional step we do as humans, which is I go look in my bank account to see how much money I have. That doesn't work when you start to grow in business. You might do it at the start, but as you start to grow, as your volumes and transactions and the number of clients increases, you have to have a way to forecast forward and just check to see whether you're going to expect a deficit or surplus, and then you react to it. Because that's what happens is when people don't look at that, they don't have a system to track that, they can get to a point where all of a sudden you run out of money and your credit rating drops and all your funding drops or your projects can't be funded. And before you know it, like I've seen with my own eyes, you can go under.
Whew.
I know it sounds a bit scary.
It sounds like we really need to pay attention to this. So how then do you help founders price their products for long-term sustainability not for fear, not out of fear or comparison or guesswork, so that they can continue to have the cash flow they need?
Good question. So pricing is the first step around pricing is you've got to take your emotions out of it. You have to focus on value. You also have to take the market into account, but can't follow the market because sometimes in some areas the race is to the bottom and people are charging cheaper and cheaper. There's always someone cheaper than you. But if we follow the value that we drive to bring into our pricing, right? Any experience that we can take from the market, we take, but the value is key. And then we just try and use the numbers, try and work with the numbers, try and understand what kind of margin we're looking for, try and make sure we stay above break even and things like that. So pricing is a very sensitive topic, right? And is one that majority of times there isn't that right number, but we just got to come to a calculation, come to a value that we're happy with, and we just stick with it.
That makes sense. So some people, just listening to this, they feel like there's so much to do, but a lot of us are also talking about AI right now. Are there like smart ways or tools that you would say, like AI tools that a founder can use to stay on top of finances without necessarily trying to be their own accountant, but maybe are there any AI tools or strategies or something like that you'd recommend?
No, so that's an interesting one. I mean, in the past, I used to find myself saying Google is your friend, but now AI is your friend. And really, it's we've just got to use it for what it is. We've got to use AI to try and make things simpler for us. Luckily, in the tech space, with a lot of software and products that we're using, those guys are starting to embed AI into what they do and on all the services they give us. So by the nature of it, we're adopting AI as we go along, but we have to think about, how do we use AI to make things simpler? So, like for instance, when we talk about some of the clients that work with us, they're using AI tools to load document transactions or invoices or receipts, and it's extracting all the information from those and it's pushing it into the accounting software. So that's really making things a bit more accurate, but also making things easier. And then on the back end, we are taking from the accounting software into various tools using AI to then produce the information that the business owners can see in a simple way to make decisions that would ultimately fuel the business growth. So it's really just using these tools to make life easier, not trying to become an accountant, but trying to get the information in front of you that you can understand to be able to make those decisions.
Okay, that makes sense. I keep thinking about your comments about cash flow. If someone hasn't been paying attention to their cash flow, they just, like you said, they know they're profitable. Is there a strategy that you would recommend that they do today to go and pay attention to their cash flow? Like, is there something or a tool or some kind of strategy that they can just start today and say, okay, now I can see where my cash flow is. I can plan around it, those kinds of things.
So, and just to go back to what I mean by a cash flow forecast, when I talk about forecast, I mean looking forward. At the heart of this, the base of all of this is good data, it's financial processes. That means that I can know how I'm performing today or how I performed last month. I can know today how I performed last month. Now, if I know how I performed last month and the month before and the month before, and this is accurate, then what I can do is I can use that as a basis to look forward and say, look, how am I going to be doing in 6 months? And then I can do one of two things. I can allow for scenario analysis. Like I could say, I've got this project coming, this is what it's going to bring. It's going to bring this revenue, but this revenue is not going to come till 2 months' time. But to deliver this revenue, or this service or product, I have to incur these costs. So then you can build in from the numbers that I have now. I can then work out in 3 months' time, will I need to get a bridge loan, or will I need to sell something to cover me for that period before I get paid in 5 months' time? And so those kind of steps really for, and it could be some fancy tool that could do that for you from your accounting software. It could be Excel. I mean, it's just really taking the time to do the exercise and then think, okay, even if I have a surplus, now I know I'm going to have a surplus. What do I do with this cash in the meantime, right? To make the most of it. But most importantly, if I have a deficit, how can I be prepared for that period or that time?
Okay. You make it sound so simple. And you make
It
it sound
is.
so simple. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, what about some of us entrepreneurs that are like, when I get there, I'll figure it out. I figured it out before, I'll figure it out again. How do you respond to those kinds of people?
And I think, you know what? That's the majority of people, right? Because when people start, you kind of just want to go bit by bit. The idea is in a business. But I'll give you a little analogy here. So a pilot on a plane, he's going to New York, right? He's going to go into New York, and he needs to think about where he's going to go. He needs to think about the fuel. He needs to think about the food on the plane, the right support in terms of crew. And then he's got a taxi to the runway, and then he's going to accelerate to that runway. Now, if he didn't have that plan in terms of where he was going, some of the decisions that he would make, he wouldn't have made. He wouldn't have, maybe not enough fuel, maybe there would be no food, and he would just taxi around. And that's kind of like what I think of the life of a business owner. You have to really take the time to understand what it is you want to do, and then you have to then plan it, right? You have to plan it, and then you have to set goals, right? These big goals, to then work out what you're going to do and then execute it to be able to actually have a chance of getting there. I'm not sure if that answered that question clearly enough.
That was such a good answer because, like you said, if we don't plan, we'll find ourselves in places where we didn't really want to be in, but because we didn't plan, that's just where we are. That's where we find ourselves. So that makes a lot of sense. So if
And,
you have, go ahead.
and sorry, let me just back that with another example. I spoke to a guy who is a client of mine now, and when we first spoke, he wanted to be a fitness instructor. Okay, he was a fitness instructor. He set up his company because someone told him to, and he came to me. Now, when we spoke, we just had a little conversation, and he said, "Look, how much do I want to make?" I asked him, how much do you want to make? And he told me like 100K, I want to make 100K. So he's now, okay, look, how much do you think you need to make? Because you work in a gym, can you make 100K from a gym? Bearing in mind that when you make 100K, you don't take 100K. You'd have to make more money to cover your costs. And so let's say you need to make 300 to 400K. Can you make that in the gym? And he said, no. And then all of a sudden, he's now thinking about his other ideas. So he's thinking about, I need to sell programs, I need to be online, I need to maybe rent a space, I need to get other trainers and make money off of them, doing some work in my space. And so all these ideas start coming up for him. And that's because he was able to take that time to think about ultimately where we're going in terms of direction. What do we want out of this? How much time do we want to invest? And really, when I look at books, because I look at books all the time, when I look at books of very successful businesses, and I look at books of people or business owners who are just getting by, when I look in the financials, I see for the successful ones, I see an investment, I see a backing of themselves, I see loans. Not to say everyone must take a loan, but I see that kind of commitment. They've got loans, they've got marketing budget, they're hiring some people who are consultants or subcontractors to support them. And that's all in the direction that the business owner will be thinking about when you start, which sometimes people will just sort of, oh, well, I'll see how it goes, and I'll see how it goes. And we have to really commit. So that would be my advice for business owner just starting. Just be clear on where you're going and commit.
Wow, that example was so good because it's like when you have a plan, you're able to make better decisions because you'll make the decisions that will take you where you want to go, as opposed to what other people are telling you or what you think is the right thing. But you're like, okay, I want to make 100K. It would take me a lot harder to make 100K, in the gym. So what are some other options? And then it kind of opens up your mind to brainstorm and think and see what other people are doing. So I really like that. So if you had 1 hour to set a founder up for 12 months of growth, what would be the first thing that you focus on? You just have 1 hour. You can't do everything.
So linking on to the back of what I said, the first hour we would be working on his goals. So it's really trying to understand what the business owner wants from the business, and what what the business owner wants for themselves, that would then link to what we want the business to deliver, how that business is going to deliver that. And then we would then go into thrashing out what the business is going to do and try and make sense of it, try and see it make sense. Because I've seen, but that's the number one pitfall of a business. If you bring something to the market, you haven't thought about it, you haven't researched it enough. So we'll try and go through the model that the business owner wants, and then we will start to build. Once you're clear on that model, tweak it if you have to. Then you start to think about, okay, what do we need to get it there to the level that you want? How quickly can we get it there? And that we can shoot 3 years out. And then from 3 years, we can come back into 1 year, 12 months, and then we go 90 days, and then we go 30 days. So straight away, that business owner then becomes clear what they need to do. They become clearer if they need investment or funding. They become clearer if they need support in terms of staff. They become clearer if they need systems in place. And straight away, that person leaves my office and they know exactly what they're going to be doing this month.
That's so good. So good. Um, I know a lot of people reach out to you about being tax efficient. Like they want to make sure they're not paying so much in taxes. But of course, you also want to make sure that you're doing what's right for your business, not necessarily just doing things because you don't want to pay taxes. So, what would you say is one tax efficiency move that founders often miss? And maybe how can they fix it before the end of the year?
Yeah. So, and I think the first point is, and because tax efficiency is key. I think we pay a lot of tax, and it's my number one priority to make sure people are not paying more than they should be legally. Now, and that's to say that I don't want people's focus 100%, because a lot of times I get a lot. People, the focus is, I don't want to pay, I don't want to pay tax. I want to make a loss. I just want to, I just want to pay no tax. And it's fine. But when that becomes your purpose, you end up kind of selling yourself short. Your drive is kind of is held back because you don't want to pay tax. You don't want to make a profit, basically. So my view is, let's, number one goal is to make as much money as we can, to make the business as successful as we can without killing ourselves. But then, that being said, one of the things or areas where I feel people miss out, especially for startups, is your pre-setup costs. So, and by that, what I mean is, some people think about, I want to set up a business, and then you start looking at this, start looking at this, start looking at this, and finally you set up a business, you set up a limited company, you set up a bank account, and then you kind of start trading. But all the things that happened before that company was even set up, before you even had a business bank account, all of those costs you can bring into the business. And so your first year, you have a bunch of expenses that you could offset against your revenue, and maybe make a loss then, right? But so that's one area, and that applies also to VAT. When you have a first registration of VAT, so the threshold for VAT is 90K. So you're trading. Once you hit 90K, you register for VAT. You can voluntarily register as well, but that's a separate conversation. But what then happens at that first registration, you can go back 6 months for services. So by that, I mean services that you have paid for, right? You can claim the VAT on that in your first VAT submission. So 6 months for services, 4 years for goods, as long as the goods are still in the business. So those are two areas of benefit where I often see business owners miss out on.
Oh, that's so good. Okay. All right. So I
Let's know
know
where that came from. Sorry.
I know there's so much more. There's so much more. Okay. Now let's bring it down to like one thing. What would you say it's one financial habit that a founder can start today that will save them lots of pain later? One habit.
Yes. And one thing I'd point to is the amount of times where I talk to a business owner and I ask them, how much did you make last year? And they don't know. So, and that's because by the way the system works is your accounts. So let's say your accounts, your year end finishes in December. So if your year end finishes in December 24, your accounts are not due till 9 months after. So September, right? So for a lot of businesses, it's only in September of the following year that they will see the accounts, right? At that point, there's no, all you can do with those numbers is pay tax and file your accounts to Companies House. There's no decisions can be made from those numbers. So my hack or advice to business owners is to have a system in place that allows your numbers to be brought or presented to you, or you present them to yourself more frequently, and look at your numbers. Just look at how you're performing. Make sure your accounts are set up in a way that gives you the insight, even if it's 30 minutes. Just look at it and just see how you're doing. Start to watch things go up and down and start to understand what you could do about it. So that would be my number one hack.
Wow, so good. And we are running out of time. So I want to say, first of all, thank you so much. This has been really, really good. I have a lot to think about, a lot of numbers I need to go pay attention to. So thank you for this.
No,
Um,
you're welcome.
as people are watching or listening to this and they're saying, oh, I need to connect with Chidi, I have questions, I have more thoughts, what would be the best way for them to reach out to you?
I think email is always number one, chidi@virtualfocusaccountants.co.uk, or Chidi Egbujie on LinkedIn as well. Or Virtual Focus Accountants, there'll be a form on my website. You can book a meeting or just contact me.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chidi. It's been such a
Thank you
great
for having me.
conversation.